All right, everybody. Welcome everyone out there in social media land. It's another Friday with the Flint Public Health Youth Academy. We are excited because y'all, this is February. And February has special meaning for us because it is the month that has been recognized in this country to celebrate the contributions that African Americans have made in just world history, in United States history, and we're going to even take you back to African history on today. So we're excited about this show. We have a wonderful lineup of discussion today. We have an excellent moderator. Kayla Shannon will be our moderator on today. And we're just excited about what's happening and what we are about to discuss. So before we get into the actual presentation, I often like to lay the foundation for Black history. In the United States, oftentimes when Black history is discussed, it starts with slavery. And there is so much more to our existence. There is so much more to the contributions that our ancestors made that happened before slavery, but it's never captured in the books. How many of you all know that Egypt, modern day Egypt, is a Greek word, and the original place was called Kemet. Some even called it Nubia. And it was in ancient Kemet that those people erected the pharaoh, the pyramids, and they were the pharaohs, and they erected the Haramkat, which is the Sphinx now, which is a Greek word. And it was people that were of brown skin that were African, the ancient Africans that were the founders of science, of architecture, of engineering, of biology. They were mummifying bodies and booby trapping tombs, like in Tomb Raider and all that stuff. So I often start that because I don't want youth of color to ever be intimidated by any math or any science, because your ancestors created it and mastered it. And the Greeks later came over to Kemet and learned, and then later conquered Kemet and renamed it Egypt, and then blew the nose of the Haramkat off, renamed it the Sphinx, because they did not want it to have those African features, okay? So I want you to know that you come from greatness, you embody greatness, you will leave in this world greatness, and there's more greatness to come. So with that, I'm gonna turn this conversation over to our dynamic moderator, Kayla Shannon. Take it away, Kayla.
Hi, everyone. Again, so glad to be back here with you again, able to celebrate Black History Month, which is very near and dear to my heart, and also I'm sure the hearts of several of my colleagues, my fellow interns. So we're gonna get right into it. I'm not gonna talk for too long. If I knew how to work my computer, that would make this a lot easier. One moment, please. Okay. And so, yeah, we have a quick presentation for you all today, and I'm just gonna let my fellow interns take it away. Taishay, this is your slide.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot about that. Okay, so this is Alice Walker. She was from Eton, who she also received a bachelor's from Sarah Lawrence College. The impact she's made is the book. She's the author of The Color of Purple, By the Light of My Father's Smile, and many other books that are pretty much good. I think I've read some of her books. And books have been translated into more than 24 languages and have sold more than 15 million copies. And that's pretty cool that she's won the Pulitzer Prize from The Color of Purple book. She coined the term womanist.
I'd also like to add that she had a brief stint of enrollment at Spelman College. She was enrolled there for 2 years. So she did attend the illustrious Spelman College, although that's not where she got her degree from.
Up next, we have Rosario Dawson. She was born in 1979. She's from New York City, And her family began by squatting in abandoned buildings when she was 6. And crazy enough, within 9 years, her acting career kind of blew up, or at least started when she was 15. She's featured in a couple of movies like Men in Black, the show Mandalorian, and Unstoppable. And her impact is that she's affiliated with Doctors Without Borders, the Nature Conservancy. She's fundraised for the Lower East Side Girls Club. She's broken many social barriers as an Afro-Cuban and Puerto Rican.
All right, so next we have Melba Patillo Beals. She was born on December 7th, 1941, which is the day of the Pearl Harbor incident in history, which is kind of wild. She was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. Sorry. She grew up in a home mainly sheltered from segregation, that was very prevalent at the time. However, she was still greatly affected on a daily basis. And around when she was 12, the Supreme Court ruled in the Brown v. Board of Education, deeming that segregated schooling was unconstitutional. And Beals' mother was actually one of the first students that were part of the integration process at this time. About when Beals turned 15, she applied to join the Little Rock Central High School in Little Rock, of course, which at the time was a very segregated school, a very white school, despite the court rulings going out anyway. She was among the 9 Black students that had signed up that year to integrate the high school, and they're famously named the Little Rock 9, my apologies. Out of all the rampage she had and other 8 students received, Beals stood strong and actually got inspired to become a journalist and writer through it all. She has written a lot of novels, a lot of great books, including one of her most favorite stories, Warriors Don't Cry. And I'm reading that book right now, almost finished with it. It's a great story. If you can pick it up, I would greatly recommend it. Where she goes into detail regarding what she felt, what she personally felt. It's a story about her being one of the first to integrate in the emotion of fear, but also courage and strength behind the massive movement. She continues to tell her stories and fight through social justice today, going in many interviews and appearing in a lot of social justice movements. And actually up next is my other one, Carter G. Woodson. I felt it was very necessary to bring him in here, even though he was, alive a while ago. It's still very prevalent today. But anyway, he was born December 19th, 1875, notes are wrong here, in New Canton, Virginia. He grew up working hard as a sharecropper and a miner to support his large family. He worked with his dad a lot, and he learned how to, support a huge family. He had to. So he moved to many different states when he was young, actually, in a short amount of time to continue his pursuit of education because he was very intelligent. Going from Berea College in Kentucky, spending a little time there, to the University of Chicago to earn his master's, and then directly to Harvard to earn his PhD in 1912. He was also the second African-American to ever graduate from Harvard at the time. He dedicated all of his adult life in the field of education, becoming a history teacher at many different schools and colleges. And he founded Black History Week, which was the very beginning of what would soon become Black History Month. In 1915, he aided in the founding of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History Today. And Woodson was known for, being a very big, prominent part in the movements, of course, for integration and the ending of segregation and civil rights in general. And he wrote many, many books, and a lot of them were bestsellers. He passed away on the 3rd of April, 1950, and he's definitely an honored and respected figure of reform.
I'm up next. I chose Michael Eric Dyson because he is, alive at this moment. He's doing a lot of stuff for like racial injustice and racial inequalities and stuff in America. He was born October 23rd, 1958 from Detroit, Michigan, which is really cool because he has somebody from not very far from Flint. So I thought that would be really cool to have him in. He attended Knoxville College but received his bachelor's from Carson Newman College in 1985 and received a PhD from Princeton University in 1933. Some cool things about Michael Eric Dyson is he is a professor at a college himself. Early in 2021, he moved to Vanderbilt University, where he holds the Continental Chair and serves as the University Distinguished Professor of African American and Diaspora Studies. And prior to that, he was a professor of psychology at Georgetown University, which is really cool. His impact, he's authored and edited over more than 20 books, which is crazy. He's wrote about subjects like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Marvin Gaye, Barack Obama. He even edited Nas's debut album. He wrote books about Bill Cosby, Tupac Shakur, and also Hurricane Katrina. Some fun and cool facts is he had his own radio show, which is really cool. Kind of similar to what we have going on here. And like I mentioned before, he edited an album as well as a book for the rapper Nas.
So next we got Macy Jemison, and she was born October 17, 1956. That makes her about 64 today, or to this year. She's from Decatur, Alabama, and she received her medical degree from Cornell University and Medical College in 1981. Right after that, she became a Peace Corps medical officer in Sierra Leone and Liberia. In 1985, she returned to the United States and applied to NASA's astronaut training program. Because of the Challenger crash in 1986, when the second African-American man, Ronald Irwin McNair, went to space, because of that crash, she wasn't able to join immediately, but she reapplied, which I gotta say takes a lot of bravery and courage, because me hearing about an explosion, I'm looking the other way. But she reapplied the next year and was accepted in 1987. And then she became the first African-American woman to be trained in the NASA astronaut program. After another year of training, she earned the title of Science Mission Specialist. And on September 12, 1992, she became the first African-American woman in space. She was up there for about 8 days, a little bit longer than 190 hours. And yeah, she still does a lot of things like education and sciencey related stuff today.
All right, so I'm next. This is Katherine Johnson. She was born August 26, 1918, and she actually recently died a year ago, February 24th of 2020. She had helped calculate the projection of Apollo's lunar module, and she was born in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. She was actually handpicked to be one of the 3 Black students to integrate from West Virginia's graduate school. And she actually had started attending high school at 13 on that campus on West Virginia State. She had enrolled in college at 18, and she was mentored by the third African-American to earn a PhD in mathematics, which was Professor W.W. Shiflin Clayton. And she had graduated with the highest honors in 1937. She ended up She had help with the 1957 Soviet satellite Sputnik launch. She had helped provide the math calculations for the notes on space technology and a bunch of other things. One of her most, well-known ones was when she had, in 1962, she had helped John Glenn prepare his orbit, and she had helped them get it calculated and everything. She had actually won the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is one of the most highest civilian honors by President Barack Obama himself. And she's also helped co-sign and write a bunch of other novels and helped with Alan Shepard's May 1961 mission, Freedom 7.
Hello. So I had Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson. So she was born on August 5th, 1946, and she's still alive today. So she attended the Institute, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and she was the first Black woman to receive a PhD from this institute. And so she also taught at Rutgers University from 1991 to 1995. And so her impact was, so she was famous for creating telecommunications. So she was also in 1995, she was appointed by Bill Clinton to serve as the chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And also she became Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, the 18th president of that. And so also she received the Medal of Science. Another additional fact is that so she's helped raise over $1 billion in donations for good causes and stuff, and is really helping to push women's impact in science. So.
All right, this is Mark Dean, who was born on March 2nd, 1957 in Jefferson City, Tennessee. He is currently 63 right now and will turn 64 on the 2nd of March. He got his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Tennessee, received his master's in electrical engineering from Florida Atlantic University, and got his PhD from Stanford University. His impact was he was the first African-American to become an IBM fellow, which is the highest level of technical intelligence at the IBM company. The IBM company makes personal home computers at the time. He became an IBM fellow by co-creating the IBM personal computer in 1981, in which he was the lead designer for the 1 gigahertz computer processor. I mean, this is 1981. It was kind of revolutionary at the time. I mean, compared to what we have now, it's pretty crazy. And was part of the team that created the 16-bit ICA bus, which nowadays we have 64-bit buses, but it was really, really important at the time. In 1997, he was inducted to the National Inventors Hall of Fame.
Okay, so I'm up next. For the Black politicians, I chose Raphael Warnock. He was born on July 23rd, 1969. He was born in Savannah, Georgia, received a bachelor's degree in arts in psychology from Morehouse College, which Cruz attends, and I would like to attend in the future. Received a Master of Divinity, Master of Philosophy, and a Doctor of Philosophy degrees from Union Theological Seminary. Right now, he is serving as a junior United States Senator, and also the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, which is Martin Luther King Jr.'s former congregation, which is a really cool fact, or at least I thought so. Let me see. Sorry, I'm pulling on my. I was scrolling on my notes. But in 2005, he became the senior pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. He's the 5th youngest person to serve as Ebenezer's senior pastor since its founding, which is another really cool fact. For me, I think of that as being such a long time ago, but to see that he's the 5th is like a super crazy thing because it really wasn't that long ago. In January 2020, Warnock decided to run in the 2020 special election for United States Senate. At the time, the seat was held by Kelly Loeffler. I hope I didn't butcher that name. He was endorsed by Democratic senators such as Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, Sherrod Brown, Kristen Gillibrand, Jeff Merkley, Chris Murphy, and many more. Even former President Barack Obama, which is another really cool fact. And he is the first African American Democrat to be elected to Senate seat in a former state of Confederacy.
And last but certainly not least, we have Stacey Abrams. She was born December 9th, 1973. and she's still alive today. Obviously, I won't tell you how old she is because that's rude, but she's from Madison, Wisconsin. She received a bachelor's from Spelman College, which is my current college. So an honor to exist in her legacy, exist as a part of her legacy. She received her master's degree from LBJ School of Public Affairs, and then she went on to receive her a doctorate degree from Yale Law School. She is the first woman to lead either party in the Georgia General Assembly, and she's also the first African American to lead the House of Reps. She spent, I believe, a total of 12 years, 7 of them leading the House of Reps. She played, or 7 of them leading the Georgia General Assembly, which is the highest seat to have. She played a pivotal role in putting the Biden Harris administration into office because she is the founder of FPHYA, which is an organization that registered over 80,000 Georgia citizens to vote, which obviously, as we all saw, had a major impact on, pushing Biden over into, a more like obvious and clear win. And as a fun fact, this is something that I didn't know about her. She has published 8 romantic novels under the pen name Selena Montgomery. So that's pretty cool because she's this political figure by day and a romantic novelist by night. And that's actually everything that we have. And go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can sum it up, and then we'll
So
go into
now,
discussion.
we just wanted to have conversation because we've presented to you all of these amazing, dynamic, pivotal African American figures who have had such vast impacts on our country, and so we just want to have conversation. And the first question that I'd like to raise to my fellow interns is, when you were in the process of researching your person or people, what surprised you and what was like most interesting to you about the process of researching your person?
Oh.
So I see Cole and then Amir and then Cruz.
It was like when I was actually going through it, it's pretty surprising how many actual inventors their color that go unnoticed. It's kind of sad how many there are because I saw a lot and I feel like they should be way better representative today.
So for mine, personally, like it's crazy how like my individual person, that she can count for either science or inventor, like slash. So it's like crazy to think about how much reach she had over multiple categories, and I think it shows like how much of an impact you can have in one certain person, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. The fact that astounded me most is the one I mentioned with the fact that the Challenger flight blew up right before she decided that, like, oh yeah, I want to do this. But besides that, I mean, it's just incredible to just like see people's stories and to see some of the adversity that they go through, and understand like some of the cool things that they did. Like Jemison was like really determined. Like she wanted to be like an astronaut like since she was a child, and so she never let that go, kind of. And I think that's really cool. I think it's like, if you really want something and focused and determined to get it, there's a lot of potential out there for you to like achieve that goal. Also, she went to different places and like was like, yo, I'm gonna help y'all out. That was cool.
Yeah, see, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely not going to space on nobody aircraft, and I'm definitely not going after the first one blew up. Like, no, ma'am, no, sir. So I saw Christian's hand, and then I also saw Everett's hand. And then after Everett, we'll have Taisha.
So actually, I'd just like to point out like hearing everybody else's talking and, doing my own research as well. It was just inspiring how much, like everyone else already said, how much courage, how much work was put into it. especially some who were in the worst of time zones. And it was just all, incredibly inspiring to me for sure, because they went through thick and thin. They went and did a bunch of work when people thought they wouldn't be able to. They accomplished things people didn't think was going to happen for, lower morale. They brought that morale back up, and now it could be normal. Back then it might not seem normal at all, but now it's perfectly normal. It should have been normal from the start, of course, but we just needed good nudge for some reason. But yeah, it's just very inspiring. It's very inspiring, and yeah.
Yeah, everyone else has really picked that bits and pieces of what I wanted to say, but there was like three main things that really excited me about doing this. One of the things was, the history part of it. When we talk about history, you often think about stuff that happened such a long time ago. And like doing this research, I'm like seeing a lot of different like laws and things that were passed, and a lot of people who are around that I'm just like, it really wasn't that long ago. Like this really, like 50 years sounds like a really long time, which it is, but in a way it's not. The other thing was how I think it was Christian who was saying that now some of these people were going through a lot as they were like growing up and starting to be more active in their activism or in their education pursuit, whatever it is. Just seeing what people had to go through in the past to get to positions of power is really amazing to see. And then the third thing was seeing people who were close to home and seeing people who like well, at least the people that I did, where one of them was really close to home, like grew up in Detroit, Michigan. That's like 45 minutes from me. And then the other one attended Morehouse College, which is like my dream school. So that was just a cool thing to see that powerful, smart people are doing things that I wanted to do beforehand. So like Kayla was saying, I kind of get to follow in the legacy of these people and be a part of the legacy.
So with the whole me researching this, I mean, yeah, I've seen the Hidden Figures movie. I've done like a little bit of research on her, and even growing up, I loved math, but she loved math. She just didn't do math. She did French apparently, and that's also funny because you don't see a lot of Black people who enroll in French at around her time, and like my note said. My note says she was one of the top 3 to be handpicked by like West Virginia school college itself. That's like mind blowing. You don't ever see that. And I mean, she's done some minor things too. And it was just like I really wanted to do a lot on her, but it's just like there's so much that this one person did that a lot of other people probably have done the same that don't get recognized for it.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, what was so surprising as I did my research was the fact that it's 2021 and we still have people of color that are doing stuff for the first time. Like, I was like, she was the first one. It's 2021. Like we haven't sat in every seat yet. We haven't had the opportunity, the doors open to us, the spot, the place at the table, so to speak, to do everything yet. Like, but I mean, obviously, as surprising as it was to me, on the opposite end, I was like, I mean, I'm not surprised because we just had our first female vice president. We just had our first vice president of color. Like these are things that we're watching happen. But it was also in a way like inspiring to me, but to think that like I could be the first something for someone. I could be the person that steps into a position and shows some little girl, some little Black girl, like, yeah, you can do this. This is a position that's open to you, or hold the door open for them, or create our own table for the people who are going to be coming after me. So I'm just so proud once again to stand on the shoulders of people like Stacey Abrams, of people like Alice Walker. Like it's just so crazy to even think that their names are associated with a school that I am privileged to attend. And so that was just so fun for me. And so my next question is, what?
So, Kayla, Kayla, before you do your next question, I just want to give you some input from the social media, our social media audience, okay? So they're like super excited. So some of the comments are like, great research that you all did exceptionally well and selected like exceptional and inspiring leaders. And the fact that you're using also and highlighting emerging leaders, that was one of the piece that, you know, and another person said that this is really good and went beyond your typical subject. So more, we love what Martin and Malcolm and Rosa did, but it's so many other people that also have played a historical part and a contemporary part in who we are. And so they were very excited that some of the focus was on, you know, inventors and scientists and the artists. And so I'm just reading literally comments off of the watch page. So just giving you guys kudos on selecting that. And then you guys can kind of talk about that process a little later. Go ahead, Kayla.
Yeah, well, thank you to everyone for the kudos on behalf of myself and my fellow interns. But my next question, I kind of wanted to dive into, so we've talked about all of these inspiring figures who have done some sort of pivotal thing for them to be recognized by us and recognizable to hundreds of thousands of other people. But I just wanted to talk about, now that we know and we recognize the importance of Black contemporary figures and historical figures. I just wanted us to speak about why do you think it's so important for these figures to be featured in American history textbook, American history classes? Sort of like make a case, make it clear, make it plain for the people who are like, I just don't get it. Like, why is it so important for you all to be represented in history books? So I see Christian and then Cruz and then Everett.
I'm just going to use my research as an example. I mean, Professor Woodson, our month right now, that's why he's important. He essentially, you know, created the whole month that we focus on the history and what everything's been through of African American and Black culture, you know? Ella Beals means she didn't think at all she'd be a writer, and she became an amazing writer, even through the traumatic experiences that she's experienced. Like, if you actually read some of her books, you really go in depth about what she had to go through to get where she was, to be in the Little Rock Nine. It's terrible. It's terrifying. And that alone is inspiring, because she's a young kid, pushed right through all of that and, you know, changed history.
Yeah. What immediately comes to mind is understanding that, you know, these people did valuable things. And it should be expected that if you do something valuable that is, you know, something that is important to society, you should get, you know, recognition for it in some sort of form, whether that be impacting social change, impacting artistic change. All those things deserve to be spoken about because they're part of American history, just like everything else. To me, it's important to value those things so that we can acknowledge them and move forward past them. Like understanding that, you know, the first Black senator in Georgia, you know, just happened is important because now we should see more of it. Someone needs to hear that so that they can, you know, continue to do that. Or, you know, if it's negative, push away from that. Like we got to understand where we come from in a lot of cases. And so if it's an American, I feel like we should learn about it as long as it's important. And a lot of things of what we said today are truly important. There shouldn't have to come moments where we have to make a movie about it because they're hidden. Like that phrase shouldn't really even be a thing. Hidden figures shouldn't be a thing. We should just know them. But yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, for me, I kind of have like a little story time. Today, actually, I was doing some civics homework, and they were talking about early American history, you know, where they had like people in Virginia and they were creating laws for the first time and stuff like that. And then I'm doing this work and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder what all the African American people were doing while all this was going on. Like while all the white people, I'm gonna say white people, but you know, it was other people too, but while all the white people were, you know, creating these laws and creating these things where they were coming up with rules for themselves to follow and then coming up with a whole second set of rules for African American people and Indians and people like that to follow. I just found that really, really crazy. And like Cruz was saying, it's really important that we highlight people of color who have done amazing things because we don't see it. Like in that history lessons I was taking today, they weren't talking about all the black people who are inventing things or the black people who are helping come up with these laws or how people who the slaves who were taking care of all these fields and making the money for these people to be of so-called importance because back then money was a big thing. They don't really talk about that in the history books, which is a crazy thing because this whole country was built on our backs, and they don't tell us that in the history books. So I feel like representation is like the biggest thing that people of color need to see, especially now where we have like the first black senator in Atlanta, Georgia. Like that's crazy for it to be the first one when Atlanta, Georgia was built on the backs of people of color. So
Yeah, and I would also venture to say that it's discouraging to not recognize yourself in your history books. Like, do you know there were so many times I attended Grand Blanc High School, which is a predominantly white high school in Grand Blanc, and there were several times that my U.S. and world history teacher would be like, go home and talk to your grandparents about this, that, and the third. Or do you have any stories relating to this, relating to the content of our discussion? And I would just sit there like, nope, my great granddad wasn't allowed to do that. My great granddad didn't serve in the same platoons as y'all great granddads. My great granddad did not receive the same treatment. My great granddad did double the work that y'all great granddads did and got half the not even half, didn't get recognition because he's not in the book. None of our great granddads are in the book until we discuss slavery, until we discuss, and even to be clear, and even when we discuss slavery, we discuss the watered down, diluted America, my bad version. Like, to be clear, we don't even really discuss slavery. We discuss slavery, like the concept of slavery, like, oh, it happened, oh, people died, and then it was over. We don't talk about how truly brutal and disgusting and like just how horrible. I didn't even learn about how truly horrible the institution of slavery was until I was at an HBCU and being educated by predominantly Black professors. And it shouldn't take that. It should not take us, we should not have to intentionally like wait until we get to a collegiate level, or wait until you take an African American studies class, or wait until like that doesn't even make sense. Like, that's illogical to me. And so it makes it hard for young people who are coming up and learning about American history to feel a part of America and to feel like they can make American history, because in many minds of students of color, the only way for them to make history is to make history within their demographic, their ethnic demographic, or their racial demographic. Like there are young people of color coming up that think, I'm not gonna make American history. I can make Black history maybe, but I can't make, and that's not okay. For there to be a separation between what Black history is and what American history is, unless we're talking about, like, obviously we wouldn't necessarily discuss Africa as in depth, but for there to be a separation from African American history and American history is unacceptable. So
Kayla, that's a national conversation that's happening. And as you all know, that's a conversation we've been having locally with some of the previous talk shows that we've had about what really is true American history. Can you have American history without talking about the contributions of African Americans? And there is, I come right to you, Cruz, in just a second, I see you. So there's this term that's coined, the miseducation. Now, for some of y'all still too young, but y'all know Lauryn Hill, the singer from, what was it, Sister Act 2, right? Okay, so Lauryn Hill put out a CD called The Miseducation, but she got that term, the miseducation, from the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, that Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote. In that book, he stated that African-American children by age 2 subliminally hate being Black, because there is no representation. The imagery that we have of ourselves, everything was negative. And later on after that, and of course, he's not saying like a Black child will just come up to you and say, no, I hate being Black, not like that, but it's internalized. And so years later, Dr. Clark did the Black Dial test. And in the Black Dial test, that's where a child would be put in front of a white dial and the black dial, and they would ask questions: which dial is the good dial? Which dial is the bad dial? Which dial is the pretty dial? Which dial is the ugly dial? Which dial is the dial that does, do good, or the smart dial? Which dial is like a litany of questions. They actually redid this dial test about 5 years ago, and they did it on Good Morning America, and got almost the exact same responses, that every African-American child, pretty much when it came down to the bad questions, they pointed to the black dial. But when it was a good statement or a good question, they pointed to the white dial. And one young lady, she was a little girl, she probably had to be about 5 or 6. When the last question she asked, after she had said everything negative was about the black dial and everything good was about the white dial, the researcher said, and which dial looks like you? And the baby, now this is when my heart broke, she dropped her head as if she was ashamed and looked away and pointed to the black dial. Imagery and representation is important. That's why it has been intentional that our contributions were not put in the history books. That's why it was intentional that Socrates and Aristotle and the other Greek philosophers got credit for calculus and trigonometry and chemistry, but didn't teach us that the Greeks went to ancient Kemet, which were people that looked like us, that created this. And they learned in those schools of universities. When Europeans were living in caves in Europe, people of color in Africa were building pyramids and had dynasties. They were pharaohs and those things. And so it is intentional that this type of separation has happened, but it's also something else. Mitochondrial DNA, that is something, what Madea said, that Dana is bad. I'm telling you, it does something. Listen, on the Animal Planet and on the Discovery Channel, they have been doing series like the last 8 years where you have Europeans, you have Asians, you have people from Australia, all tracing their DNA back to Africa, because Africa is the cradle of world civilization. So to be human is to be African. And when we talk about migrating and the polar caps and then the dinosaurs, because they existed, we got the fossils, right? All of these things happen and how the land mass is separated, then we'll understand the difference in skin tones and pigmentations and eye color. Depending on how close you were to the equator, our body adapts. But those conversations are not had because there has been an agenda in the American system to ensure that there have been a hierarchy where some are attributed greater value and others lesser. Perfect example, the original Constitution said that the slaves were 3/5 of a human being. They were less than human. So it's up to us, and Kayla said it. I didn't learn about this stuff till I actually went to someplace and was taught it. She wasn't taught it in school. Your Mrs. Deloney in her Freedom School says, the greatest gift you have to yourself and the greatest responsibility you have to yourself is to educate yourself on who you are. That goes beyond what they teach you in the school system. That goes beyond what they may teach you in your university, because everybody don't go to a HBCU. I didn't go to a HBCU. I went to a predominantly white institution. And so you have to make sure that you have this historical foundation and this grounding to understand it. Because Cruz, I think, made a t-shirt. Figures shouldn't be hidden. It shouldn't be a such thing as hidden figures. It was either Cruz or Everett. One of y'all said that. These figures need to be on the major stage. We need to talk about representation and the importance of that, which is what you guys are hitting on. But then we also understand that there is elevation from that. When we see ourselves, it elevates those that come behind us to aspire to want to be what they see us be. But if we can't aspire to be what we don't see, right? So I just want to throw that out there, that there's a historical context around this miseducation. Go ahead, Cruz. I know you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Amir, do you want to go first?
Just quick before you say something, I want to say, Dr. Key, I'm insulted by the fact that you tried to explain Lauryn Hill to me.
Oh yeah,
I
that was
know Lord
wild.
Hill. That's
That was wild.
Not
But
too
don't be excited. Don't be insulted, because there's some young people I said and they're like, who? So if it ain't,
and
I'm
shame
just
on
saying.
them. And they are a disgrace to our generation.
Wow.
Look
That's
at Shayla.
harsh words.
I'm kidding.
That's
I'm
harsh
kidding.
words.
okay, but do your research. Know who Lauryn Hill is.
That's right.
She just broke another record. Y'all should know. Amir, did you want to go first?
Sure, yes. So I think basically what I got out from this is society has really just been putting us in a box for so long and not giving us a chance to reach out. And so I think that's a big thing, is really trying to put, ourselves out there to be the leaders of the pack and really step up and make sure that we are carrying on the tradition of we are showing up to everything and being at the table, as they say. So I think that's a really good thing for us, just to do great things and be out there and be put out there. So
Yeah. Going back to school, it's just for real short. Something that I've been thinking about is we learn some of the same things every year. And one of the reasons that it might be put forward is that we don't learn about all these different histories because there's not enough time. But I also feel like we kind of lacking on how we're using it. There are some things like understanding how horrible slavery was. That's not the most palatable for like a fifth grader. I understand that, but when we get to high school age, there's not an excuse for that. I've learned about slavery at least 5 times by then, but you didn't give me any new information. That's the problem. When we talk about Africa, Africa is part of world history, but you don't really hear about Africa when you go to world history class either. So it's not just on some subliminal, like, we shouldn't really be teaching these things. No. The reality is that it is being left out because it's strange, super strange that a whole continent low-key isn't really talked about. They talk about Africa one time, and that's potentially through Nelson Mandela. And that was, after segregation. Not everything that happened before, not what happened to cause segregation. All of that stuff is left out, and it's crazy. Like, these things are done on purpose, and I feel like people need to be more aware of that. It's not just African Americans. I think people in our country in general should be aware that things are just left out, and maybe we should have a discussion about that, and then we can really have that discussion about what should be taught, because you got to start with that foundation, is that it's not about what should be taught, what is being withheld, and why is it being withheld.
And I also want to say, bring up the simple fact that the reason they exclude Africa is because they understand that they have exploited it since the country, the people, the land, since they found it. Because to be clear, as we all know, Africa has been there. Africa wasn't found when white people arrived. Africa has been there, but they've exploited the land and the people since they found it, and continue to exploit it today. Let's talk about it, because we were learning about, I have to share this because it's Black History Month and it's important, and my fellow activists, we need to get on this, because we were talking about the Congo, and I won't get into this, the long history of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but long story short, they were colonized by Belgium, exploited by Belgium disgustingly under the guise of philanthropic interests. Like King Leopold, who was over Belgium, was like, I'm saving them from themselves, while he killed the population of Africa. I believe the population of Africa was 20 million. It was about half in a couple generations. That's like the whole entire population of Michigan, our whole state, being wiped off the map in a couple generations. And that was simply for fun. Like, cause mind you, he don't get nothing from killing these people. But anyway, sorry, I said I wasn't gonna make it long. Killed half the population, continued to exploit them. Then they ended up under Belgium rule. To this day, there is a mineral that is essential for phones and other telecommunications that is predominantly found. I think something over 70% of this mineral is found, is concentrated in the Democratic Republic of Congo. To this day, almost every world power continues to exploit the people of Congo. We say slavery ended. We act like that's so long ago. May as well be slavery. They're paying them like 5 cents for phones they sell for $1,000. Let's talk about it. Come on now. Come on now.
And
So
before
that's
that, what?
has been. That's reflective of what has been.
Yeah.
Countries from across the world have always, Africa has the most resources. It's the most resourceful continent on the earth, on the planet. You know, there were gems and subliminals dropped in Wakanda, y'all. It may not be vibranium. It's a whole bunch of stuff. And there have been countries that have gone and colonized to really strip Africa of its resources. And one of the resources happened to be human beings, which was the slave trade. And but here's the piece I want to say, is that Africa, being the most rich, resourceful continents in the world, has been downplayed as the dark continent. We were taught that all Africans were savages. They act like Tarzan, swinging from ropes and all of this stuff, but yet everybody went there to get stuff out of there. So that right there should tell you that there's something going on, okay? And then here's the second thing, and then I'll yield the floor. The second thing is this. Africa, its customs, its traditions, all have been stripped away and repackaged and sold somewhere else. I'll give you an example. I told you guys about the Haram cat. They call it the Sphinx, right? It's made of two main components, right? There's a pharaoh's head, right? And there's a lion's body. The ancient Africans, who were Nubians, who were from Kemet, they created that big monument, because in Africa, art had spiritual, cultural, and religious significance. The Sphinx or the Haram cat had a lesson to it. It was that in each of us that we have two natures. We have a kingly or a queen nature, a prince nature, a higher nature, and we have a lower nature, an animal nature. And at any given time, you need to know what will trigger you to ascend into your higher self or descend into your lower self. Now, the Europeans came, grabbed the concept, then went back and called it your good conscience and your bad conscience. And on all our cartoons, it'll be Tom and Jerry and a little angel over here saying do this and a little devil saying that. Literally everything that was created in Africa has been stolen. That whole philosophy of consciousness and a higher consciousness and a lower, that came from Africa, but that's not taught to us. Right? We're just trying to figure out why the nose was blown off, even though we know why, because it had too many African features, right? But anyway, I say that to say this, that we have been contributing to what we call world history since the annals of time. We are the original people. We are descendants of the original people. Actually, everybody is African. To be human is to be African, right? And so we need to understand that, we need to embrace that. And then those of us that are in a country like America, and we talked about this, race is a social construct, right? Race has to do with your ethnicity, and your ethnicity should have to do with the landmass from which you come. Asians come from Asia. Australians come from Australia. I ain't found black land or white land on the map yet. But in America, they've created black and white because it has nothing to do with humanism. It's all about political power. And so we just need to be cognizant of that and then do our own research and then educate each other. Go ahead, Cruz. And we're, Kayla, after Cruz, if you have any other questions, if not, then we can kind of wind down. Go ahead, Cruz.
Oh, nah. What I was going to say is like gone now. But yeah, racism as a construct is a real thing, because slavery didn't start because of racism. And that's like a false notion. It didn't start because of that. It started because the Africans that they stole were skilled farmers. Like, there was no concept of black skin meaning less than. You know, there was none of that before. And they created that system to create a distinction, to dehumanize us, so that, you know, it was acceptable for them to do these things, these horrible, horrible things. But yeah, it's ridiculous that some of these things just go unsaid, like what happened with the Democratic Congo. I mean, it's just wild. And it's a lot of people that they killed, like enough to be considered a genocide. And it's so wrong. It's so wrong. And I didn't learn about it until I took a history class in college. And that was offered at a PWI, but it was kind of still just glossed over. Like this was just a normal section in history. Like this wasn't just some horrendous event. We spent like a day on that event. World War II, World War I, those got weeks. You know what I mean? And that's not to belittle those things, because what happened there is just as bad. But it's ridiculous that these things are not taught or talked about at all. I didn't mean to derail the conversation though.
And I just want to say, and then I'm going to ask my last question and we can wrap up. To be clear, it's so crazy to me, just thinking about when I learned American and world history, because they hated Hitler for doing the same thing that they done for centuries. The only reason they hated Hitler is because he did it to people that look like them. Like, let's be real. Come on now. Because America committed genocides, France committed genocides, Great Britain committed genocides. All y'all need to go to jail. We really need to go back to the UN because because what like why can't we just be frank? Sorry, hold on, mine's doing too much. Like, let's be frank. Genocide is the direct and targeted killing of large amounts of people for no reason, to simplify. Like that's why in American history books is the Trail of Tears not acknowledged as a version of genocide? Why? Because America wants to wipe its hands, because America likes to throw stones, hide its hands, and be like, who did that? So anywho, I digress. My last question, and this is open to everybody, whether you're a person of color or not, to be clear, is as we wrap up, how do you believe that you can make history? And I'll go first to give y'all some time to think, because I know that, and Everett, you can go after me. I believe that I can make history by being compassionate and encouraging compassionate conversation across divides. It's something that I'm very passionate about. Talking is something that I'm very passionate about as an extrovert and as a poet. But conversation that actually produces some sort of maybe not a middle ground, but that produces understanding. I think what we're lacking so much in America today is a simple understanding of those who disagree with you, and a simple understanding of why they disagree. I think so much hate could be dispelled by simple understanding. So yeah, that's how I think I can make history. Everett, let us know.
Yeah, Kayla really kind of hit my point, but we can make history by bridging the gap. You know how she said divides, bridge the gap between people who are going through things and people who aren't, but think things don't exist just because they're not going through them. We're making history right now by just being on this talk show, because the internet will be here for as long as it is here, and we're making history. Um, you can make history doing a million different things, but I feel like the most important thing about making history is that making sure that once you make history, that the story is told. So whether that's through your family, through your friends, through somebody you just met off the street, we all talked about how certain things were being left out of history books. Now let's start, even though it's left out of a history book, let's just tell somebody. When we see somebody at the grocery store, let's tell somebody. So let's move history that way.
I'm gonna go next. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm about that energy, even at the grocery store. But yeah, for what I would say is, I want to be the best version of me, and I think that's the easiest way to make and the simplest way to describe, to have as much impact in history that I can make. And whether that being, we like to idolize different people who have done monumental things in history, but in that way we sometimes dehumanize them. And I believe that it's important to know that some of those traits that they have, we can accomplish that too. You have to desire it. You have to hold yourself to certain standards, and you might have to work really hard to do those things. But if it's desired enough, I think it's accomplishable. And so I want to be a person that people will look at and be like, he stood up for what he thought was right. And I don't want to be wavering on that at all. And I'm going to do my best to stay concrete on those morals.
Beautiful, beautiful. Would anybody else like to share? Taisha, I see your hand. Oh, Miss Monisha's gonna join us in conversation. I'm excited.
So you said the question was how do we think we'll make history, or what we would do to make history? Okay, so for me, I'm like you guys said, I want to be someone that people wouldn't like sort of expect would do something powerful, but like at the same time they would. For me, I want to be like if I were to be something like inspirational, I would honestly be a motivational speaker, because of like people really don't speak up about Black communities that much as well. And even like now, like there's a lot of Black people out there who are living in poverty and stuff. And I want to encourage them not to give up, and that the harder they work, the better things will get, and not to give up. Because I grew up in foster care twice. I was actually adopted 2 years ago. And I grew up in one of the worst neighborhoods. And I've traveled through families multiple times before I found my forever home. It's hard. It really is hard. And you want to show people that they can do it, but there's not a lot of Black people out there who actually do it. Yes, there's a few that I've heard of. I can't remember his name, but there was one he was talking about drowning, and you want to live. And when you're swimming, you want to keep swimming so you can keep living and keep living. And I can't remember his name, but that's what I want to be like, but there's not a lot of women out there doing it, Black women out there doing it. And that's what I think would be something I would do to help, make history.
For me, I would, and going after Taisha, I just like, wow, that was amazing what you just said. So I'm like, mine is pretty short. I just think that being a compassionate person for me, reaching back and pulling others up, helping others, showing compassion, because a lot of times people are struggling to make it to the next level. Like for me, I went through phases with my situation where it was just like I would apply for jobs, I would try different things, and people would give me a hard time, and you would ask friends for help and no one would help you. And so I just want to be the person that's a compassionate person. And if I have the resources, whether it's a job or if I can help somebody, if I know somebody at a college, anything that I can help a person with, that's what I want to do. I want to help people, because people don't always have that easy, like, okay, it's easy for some people. It's not easy for everybody. And that's a very hard thing for people to deal with. So for me, that's what I would want to do. It's like, I am a compassionate person, but be compassionate and help people, be a resource for young people or anyone.
And you've absolutely already been a resource to us. So look at you making history already. Would anybody else like to comment on that question? Amir?
So I say for me, I think because I'm a very positive person, so just keep spreading positive energy and having mutual respect between one another, because I think that's one big thing where we have to have a mutual ground and mutual respect for one another, and really just treat everyone how you would want to be treated, and just be the best you can be at the end of the day. So
we need more of that. It's not enough.
So if no one else has anything else to say, the floor's still open if you do. But if no one does, that concludes our show. And I'm just so thankful to be close with, in such close proximity with people who are going to make history. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Key so he can close us out.
So this has been another great youth perspective show of the Flint Public Health Youth Academy. Your question was dynamic, Kayla, about making history. And I think you guys need to understand you're making history right now. I think the key for me is to be fearless and be intentional on what type of history you want to make. You can be the person who's been impeached twice, or you see all history ain't good history. And so you want to be intentional on the type of history you make and what side of history you land on. So again, thank everyone for joining and being a part of this Black History celebration sponsored by the Flint Public Health Youth Academy. Tune in. We are on our live talk show every other Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have some dynamic shows, some wonderful potential guests coming. And we're going to continue to have these conversations as we connect everything to public health, because everything is health, whether it's where you live, what your education level is, how much money you have, the status of your water. We got that example right here in Flint, Michigan. All of these things are about our health. And so we're excited to understand that even your history and the lack of knowing your history also impacts your health, whether it's your mental health or your physical health. So we're excited that you tuned in with us. Make sure that you join us Friday after next, same time, same place, the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, where we're making a change every day. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and we'll see you soon.